Okay, so I'm gonna crack right into it. This is the moment I think a lot of you guys, especially that are kind of veterans to our products, have been waiting for. I'm gonna show some of the new stuff that we've been working on. Okay, so caveat before we start, this is just alpha software at the moment. Like I'm gonna put a disclaimer out here. If there's something that happens like during the demo, it's still just work in progress. I will say though, what we're gonna do is when we get to a point where we feel it's stable enough, we're definitely gonna roll out a beta version of this for you guys to try out, and kind of go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is pre-beta, folks. Pre-beta. So we'll get a beta version out to you guys soon.
All right. So this is what the new BloodHound looks like. And the first thing you'll notice is where all the buttons, if you guys have been using BloodHound for any particular time. So they're actually tucked up here now. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a bunch of random stuff here, like so. There's a crossover with the two different or the same thing. You're not going to see much there. Let's do a slope one, for example. Okay, let's take the crossover off. But basically, this will be very familiar with for you guys. Adding logic templates. They're now basically tabs as well. And what's really cool here is we can actually drag these. And now I can put stuff side by side like so. I can like throw logic on one side, look at the results. I got my solver list on this side. And then I'm going to show you something really neat here. Okay, let's just open up my first demo here. Okay.
Jeremy's done is he's taken the advanced UI that BlackBird has, and he's now incorporated it into BloodHound. So you'll be able to do some cool things with the UI.
This is also pretty cool. This is a notes tab that you can throw in, and it's a full-blown word processor. You can put in tables, insert pictures and symbols. So for example, if I just throw in a quick table here like that, and this is going to be great. I think Zach, you're going to really like these tools for demoing stuff and distributing templates. Isn't that right?
Right. Yeah, I can leave notes in the BloodHound in the workshop templates.
Yeah. So let me describe what kind of like. Okay, actually, let me back up here. First thing I want to talk about is a new threshold solver. Now, all right, let me pull up my chat here so I can see what you guys are typing. Okay, how many of you guys like the current threshold solver? If you're new people, don't worry about it. The solver is basically something that's included as one of the kind of little analysis tools or nodes, if you will. How many of you guys have used the threshold solver before? Feel free to just comment in there and tell us what you think about like what it was to learn it. Oh, every day. Awesome. Okay. Right. I'm just gonna, that's great. Because can I be honest, like, you know what? I'm just gonna say I hate the indicator threshold solver. I hated it. It was designed a long time ago. And to be perfectly frank, I just thought the design had a lot to be left to be desired, especially for new people like those. Exactly. Jerry says it took a long time to use it. I don't blame you at all. That's definitely not your fault. That's in my opinion, the software design. Right. And I'll be honest, like if I haven't used BloodHound in a little while, I'll go back and I'll be like, I don't even know how to use this thing. Like I designed it, but I still don't even know how to use it myself. And like, that's a problem, right? When the designer himself can't even figure out how to do certain things. Clearly there's some, there's some room for improvement. So for example, I was like, hey, Zach, how do you put together like, I just want a signal where I want to see like, how to highlight these zones here where say, and you take a stochastic, for example. I got a stochastic up in the chart here. Imagine I just want to highlight those areas where the stochastic is between these two lines, the 80 and the 20, right? It's actually not quite that straightforward, right? And I'm sure guys like you, like Timothy, Brian, Ted, like Randy, Charles, you guys all have been using it for quite some time. You probably would have come up something like this. So Zach actually put this together. and said, this is how you do it. Right. And I'm sorry, guys, but that's just yucky, right? Like basically we want to do something between the 80 and 20s, but he had to put like, 80.1 up here, and then, these extra numbers like 19.9, like to a newbie, that's like, what is this for? But essentially there's a reason why, you had to do it like this. Is because he just had to get these numbers kind of out of the way so that he could put, a 1 between the 80s and 20s, and you get the desired effect, right? You get the point where you get all these things marked off exactly where you want them. But come on, that's just not ideal design, right? So I'm gonna stick this note on the right hand side while I work here. This is kind of cool. All right, so let's add a new logic template. Let's throw this on this side over here. Okay, and let's pop in at the new threshold solver. And the first thing I'm going to do is okay. So for those of you that are new to BloodHound, okay, I can program this, if you will. Program's the wrong kind of word, but I can tell this to use any sort of indicator that's installed on your computer. So that would be, that could also be stuff that you've bought, not just the stuff that's included in NinjaTrader. All right, we got this new handy kind of search.
Oh, I like that search. I hadn't seen that yet.
Yeah, we have all sorts of little neat little goodies in here. If you're really paying attention to if you ever used BloodHound for some time, you'll notice that the property grid didn't quite work properly with some of the new NT8 style indicators that took advantage of some of the fancy features here. And this is actually an NT8 property grid that's been plucked out and put in here. So that will make a lot of indicators that kind of use special property grid style stuff, like it'll actually work properly. And I'm sorry if I'm not making too much sense. Sometimes I get into these like overly programmerly speak, but just to know that we've been thinking about all these little details, just to make sure that every indicator possible can kind of work with BloodHound. Okay, so we have this new little thing down here, and so instead we did away with these silly little thresholds and stuff like that. You click this button, this dialog box pops up, and now the way we're going to work is we have a bunch of rules. We have range rules, fixed rules, and they're a lot easier to understand and way more flexible because you can have as many as you would like, 100 if you like, whatever. And so I'm just going to make one rule here. Okay, I'm going to use the range threshold, and you can see in plain English kind of what's trying to do up there. And I'm going to say I want to go between 20 and 80, and if so, just mark me off with both a short and a long on either side. As soon as I hit OK, and you see how basically BloodHound updates that right away.
So for those who are familiar with the current interface of BloodHound, right, you'll notice that the thresholds and both of the output sections have been merged into this new single line interface here. So instead of trying to correlate, between different sections of the UI, it's all right there in one single row when you define what, threshold values you're looking for. So it's a lot easier to set up now.
And then, so that rule stays there and I can add more, right? So say if I want to go, all right, let's say if we're below the 20 line, actually, you know what? Let's go below the 15 line. Sure, something great, just there's a little gap now. And then if that's the case, give me a short 0.5 or something random like that. So like now you can see right here, like this is below 15. We got kind of the bar going halfway. Like so.
Zach is going to love that for his workshops because he uses that sort of thing to indicate a partial condition just for information all the time without wanting it to signal. That's great.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of BloodHound, right? So you can kind of craft whatever kind of what kind of visuals you want, right? Even though this may not be technically a signal, but this is something that marks the chart off at a certain area. So a lot of the stuff, maybe like Zach was telling me, you could take a couple different threshold solvers and some different nodes to put together to actually construct the same exact same thing now. It's all
Yeah, there were some situations where you'd have to take two threshold solvers and join them together with an OR node to get what you wanted. But now you can do everything in a single solver now, because there's no limitation to how many conditions you can throw into one threshold solver. Yeah, so it's just one threshold solver for every condition now. No need to combine multiple ones anymore.
And Jeremy, after you showed just the first part, Randy already said that's so much better.
Oh yeah, we know. Yeah, I mean it's crazy how just a simple thing like this can really be kind of a game changer. And I know for those of you guys that are new, you're like, oh, what's the big deal? There's just one little note here. No, like I'm just going to be scratching the surface with this presentation. There's a lot of stuff inside of BloodHound, you know, and just for example, like we can combine conditions. You can get really complicated with your logic, and I've seen some incredibly complicated logic systems. You know, for example, this is taking two different criteria, making an and out of it. You know, it can be you could do things like you can do an OR, XOR, you know, ratio nodes. Like these are all, and like they'll be overwhelmed with kind of what I'm going with. I just want to make the point, like for those of you that are new, there's a lot of depth here. And I'll get into kind of the support resources that we offer in terms of like helping you teach and learn this, or how we teach you to learn this sort of the system so you can really take it to town. But what's really exciting, I always find, is like just kind of discovering what you guys as customers come up with. It's always really fascinating. But yeah.
So for anybody who hasn't used BloodHound yet or is fairly new to BloodHound, you know, if you got questions on what can be done with BloodHound, that's exactly what the weekly workshops are for, that I host. You know, so you're welcome to email your questions in for those workshops, you know, and I can answer them. You don't actually have to be there in the workshop for me to answer emailed in questions, you know, but if you can join live, obviously that's better. And yeah, so that's probably the easiest and quickest way that new users to BloodHound can get a quick answer as to whether something can or cannot be done with BloodHound, you know, so you can just email your idea to us and get that answer, get a quick yes or no answer. So, and yeah, so as Jeremy kind of said, really what we're going to be showing off is for people who are somewhat familiar with BloodHound. You know, they're going to get excited about this stuff for sure. So as we can see.
Yeah. And like, Zach, how long have you been running those workshops for continuously?
Since we first launched. Yeah, we started the workshops, I think like a month after we launched the business.
Yeah. And if I recall, like, I think you've only missed maybe a handful of them just from, you know, sickness or something like that. That's like almost 10 years straight, folks. I don't know.
Yeah, the only times the workshops don't function, are not open is during the holidays, and a couple of times, yeah, I've been on vacation, and a few times I've been sick. So yeah, there's pretty much about, I think we average about 48 workshops per year.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And they're all free, guys. They're like, and that's free for both current users, for trial users, you know, anybody. Yeah, so it's basically a free resource we put out there, and like, of course, a lot of people like to take advantage of that. But yeah, like, you know, we looked at this threshold solver, like, well, you know, if we can make the improvement there, you know, why not make it kind of in other places? So here's another example. And we've also improved the slope solver as well as something else I'll get into in a bit. But I asked Zach, okay, what would it take to do something like this? And this one was basically like, all right, I got the RSI here, and the RSI is in white, and the RSI actually has kind of a secondary plot called an average. That's the red line there. And we want to just mark off the zones where it really pulls away from the average really aggressively. Okay, so there's in this kind of example, I think there's actually two little spots there. The second one, I'm just gonna, let's just make this the full screen so we can see it. But the second one's over here. You can see the big spike over there, right? And we just want to mark the chart wherever that happens. And I said, well, okay, what would it take with the old way to do it? And so he came back with this, right? A little bit confusing, I would say, probably not as confusing as the threshold solver. And some of you guys that are veterans, probably don't mind using it and been used to kind of, the language and stuff like that. There's this weird thing here with the small amount and the large amount. I remember when I was first designing this, that was just kind of to get two possible kind of like thresholds, if you will, inside the comparison solver. It's a little bit confusing again for new users. So that's why it looks like this, right? And then you have all these lines here, right? This A over greater than B by 0 points or more. What does that even really mean? This stuff can be, I think, pretty daunting for new users. See, he's got a one kind of at the top one and the one in the bottom to sort of dictate the outputs. A little bit of a brain twist, if you ask me. Okay, so this is the new way to do it. And I'm going to put this right in the solvers window here. So if you notice up here, the menu systems, like they're now separated, right? So I got the solvers tab, kind of a solvers menu up here, very much like a, what was it? Microsoft Word. Right, so let's put it in the comparison solver. And let's compare the RSI. Here's our handy little search up here. The RSI, and the next one I'm going to use compare it against the average. So for the comparison, I'm going to use the RSI with the average. Okay. All right, so we'll just have some default markings up on the chart, but what we want to do is mark up those locations where it pulls away. So probably what you might think right away is, and again, there's with this system, this cool thing about it. It's however you like to think about it, you can implement it, right? So I'm going to say if we're greater than 6, if the value or the difference greater than 6, give me a long on either side. And we want to do the other way too, because sometimes the RSI is below it, right? So maybe more than -6 on the other side. Let's also mark those up like that. And so as soon as we do that, you can see the chart's updated immediately. And we got a spot over here where it's pulled away significantly, more than 6 in that case. And there's one over here as well. Okay. All right. But there's also something pretty cool here. So I'm going to show you a different way to do this with one line. And I'm going to use the range one again. Okay. We're going to go from -6 to 6. And I'm just going to pop that right on so you can see what that does. All right. Okay, so if I do this, you see that it's kind of inverted, right? Like we basically marked off all the areas on the chart where it's like, not what we want to see, right? This is so actually what I can do is I can click on this. I can say, look, I got this little kind of configuration button here, and I can flip this toggle, and that changes the threshold. So we're not threshold, but it changes the definition that we're looking at situations where we're outside these values, right? So the difference is outside -6 or 6. In other words, anything between the -6 and 6, like ignore everything outside of that, print a value. And you can see that suddenly we got something like this. We got basically the same effect there. Okay, so and this is another really cool thing. Okay, so I'm going to switch it back. But this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to range the output. So imagine you have this range from -6 to 6, okay, in terms of the separation being that much. That's a 12-point separation, if you will. And I'm gonna gradate the output so that looks like this. Now look down here. So basically, the longer these bars are, the further apart these lines are. And so you can do fancy stuff like this. And Zach, this was possible with the old solver, isn't that correct?
Let's see. Sorry, I'm answering. We're getting a bunch of good questions in there. So, yeah, fuzzy logic for that separation. Yeah, that could be done in the old style as well.
Yeah, so I'll say that a
Well,
lot
the
of
current
stuff,
interface.
yeah, absolutely anything that was done with the old way can be done with the new way. It was just a lot harder to do it, but there are some things that we've added that absolutely are brand new and cannot be done with the old way. And for example, okay, so again, I mentioned that you could have as many kind of these rules as you want. Now, what BloodHound is doing is it's just taking the first rule that matches the criteria and it's going to spit the output. You can also do something like take the last rule, and as of course you surmised, you can also order them. So I got 2 rules here now. I can sort of just drag and drop them to different priority, if you will, right? But here's where this is really cool. Okay, you can actually average the output between all the rules, so it actually will compute all of them, or you can add them out. And so you can really kind of open up all sorts of different possible outputs, if you will, just from this one solver now. In terms of yeah, I mean, we're kind of excited to see where you go with this, but I can't even sort of certainly not off the top of my head imagine like what you could possibly do with it. But
Yeah, that's for you really advanced math nerds out there that love fuzzy logic. So yeah. So there's even been an enhancement to the fuzzy logic part. So
yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. All right, so we have kind of a cool surprise here. We have kind of a new solver under development. And Zach, I guess maybe while I'm putting it together, you can sort of explain what it took normally to put something like this together using the traditional method.
wow, yeah, that's a tough one to explain without visuals, but it basically it only worked for the Bollinger Band, or it only worked for indicators that had an upper and lower band, so that they wouldn't cross each other. But basically, if anybody has used the ROC indicator, it's the rate of change. It's basically an indicator that visually shows you the slope of an indicator, whether it's sloping up or sloping down, and the amount of the slope, or a lot of people like to use the terminology degrees. How many degrees is your moving average sloping up or sloping down? So using the ROC indicator, with or inputting the Bollinger Band indicator into the ROC indicator, using a bunch of comparison solvers, we could basically kind of back engineer a way to determine if the Bollinger Bands were expanding or contracting. It was a really overcomplicated way of doing it. And so basically all that math now of using the ROC and a bunch of comparison solvers, that's now all integrated into this one expansion contraction solver, simplifying the whole process now. Plus, this expansion contraction solver will be able to work with other indicators other than just the Bollinger Band.
Yeah, and so what you can see here is anytime they're expanding, and moving way around here, at least the default definition I've got here, they're going to give you a kind of a green here, and in these zones, anytime they're kind of converging or like contracting, I should say, yeah, it'll turn red. And of course, you can customize this to your heart's desire. Say we want to do something instead where it's like on the points where we're expanding, we give ones in both directions, and then maybe zeros otherwise. We can just sort of swap it like that, and now we're just marking up just the areas where they're expanding, right? And similarly, maybe you like to look at the contraction because you're trying to look for those zones and where the price is really starting to, with the volatility is going down, right? And the trading range is narrowing, right? So maybe you're more interested in the contraction sections there. But yeah, this is a brand new solver, and you can plug that right into your logic. And yeah, like I said, we're still working out kind of like, we're still kind of toying around with this one a little bit, but at least that's sort of the preview there, what I can do. Okay, so that's, yeah. What do you think, guys? That's the new BloodHound and the new BloodHound interface. And now I'm going to
getting a lot of really good feedback. Yeah, Randy says he's loving the consistency of the rules window for all the solvers. Yeah, me too. It's gonna be so much easier to explain this to people who are asking questions about it.
Yeah, I think Zach made a joke that the threshold solver is gonna, might put Mike out of work, because the original one was generating so many support tickets that well, I don't think it was. I'm probably exaggerating.
It wasn't that bad, but it is a joke.
Right.
The fact that we can even joke about it means it's I'm glad we're changing it.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just quickly. I'm just gonna grab some data here, right? And then I'm gonna add where's my little trend here? Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna add simulated connection, and we're gonna switch gears to BlackBird. Okay. All right. And BlackBird has got a little bit of a new skin as well, but we're focused more on just like some kind of adding new features in there. Again, trying to make it more usable, give you more flexibility with your systems, all that sort of stuff. Let me point out that we had just recently released a Forex version, or the last release, we focused on making Forex working properly with BlackBird. So we're still adding more stuff to BlackBird. And as I kind of mentioned before, and this is for those of you that are new, BlackBird is a trade manager that allows you to, that actually manages the trades. And so with that, you can either enter manually using these fast trade buttons, or dynamic planning, which Zach has shown quite a few times in the workshop. But you can also integrate automated signals. So you can actually pipe in signals right from BloodHound, which is, again, I just showed you, which is sort of a signal engine, like a signal engine, or you can, if you don't have BloodHound, you can use any sort of indicator that's installed on your system, and then just tell it to go long or short based off of what values it's spitting out. So naturally, our stuff, because we are shark indicators, we're going to tightly integrate stuff, but it also works just fine as a standalone product. Okay, so the way BlackBird works is I define what we call these order sets, and each order set has an entry, which can be a whole bunch of different things like market stops and stop limits. They can be placed in any such way. If market entries, of course, you don't really specify a price, but you certainly could if you had a limit order. And I'm just going to pop in some quick 10-10 stop, and actually some people might look at this and be like, oh, is that all we got for choices? That's not the case, guys. Basically, these are just quick configurations. Okay, anytime you click one of these little guys, it just kind of pre-populates, pre-configures it, just to give you a good starting point. But you can take it from there, and you can really do anything you want with it. You can put these stop losses anywhere, not just based on some price, but you can base it off of like an indicator value. Like a lot of people like to use, what do people like to use? The PSAR, the ANA super trend, anything else, Zach, that you can think of? People like to
Keltner.
Bollinger, Keltner. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
those are the main ones. Yep.
Yeah. And you can use any indicator that's installed on your computer. And then you can have the stop trail that particular indicator, and then you could switch it up. If something happens, you can, like say you make a certain amount of profit, you can suddenly stop that trailing and then tighten it up or whatever you want to do. So you have a tremendous amount of flexibility. And so, for example, like I've got this thing based on the price, the entry price, right? And then I said, if we have an offset down here, and I said, well, let's just go by 10 ticks. So it's basically a 10 tick stop, right? But you can also put in something like an indicator. And a lot of you guys like to probably trade like ATRs. Like, you know, people talk about like, I want a 10 ATR stop. Well, you just throw the ATR here as the indicator, and you set your factor to 10. And basically Blackbird will calculate what is 10 times that indicator amount and use that as the stop price. Use that as the stop value. Basically an offset to the entry price. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to show here, if you're kind of really sharp and you've been using Blackbird for a little while, you might have noticed this little advanced tab. It's new. And what I can do is I can just click, when this is filled, reverse the position. And what that'll do is, if you get stopped out, you can actually reverse everything. And that means that the whole, like you maybe have like 3 order sets with different kind of things, like a different order set with different stops and profit targets. It'll close everything out, reverse it. So that's a great way to sort of like, if you get tagged in the market and then you're heading the wrong direction kind of early in the trade, you know, you can switch your position up and go the other way just in case it's going against you. Right. But you can even do something like limit it so it doesn't happen so like continuously, so you're not ping ponging back and forth, kind of like I was doing my very first trade when I was just, you know, getting massacred by market chop. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna limit it to 2 times, and then you can actually add like a condition as well. You can say something like, well, you know, okay, let me just state here. If you've used Blackbird for some time, you've seen this screen before, right? This little guy was our kind of delay interface, right? You select how much of a delay before X event would be triggered. Well, we've modified it slightly. Okay, so this, instead of just like, you know, something like this where it's like, you know, only allow the position to reverse after 5 bars has occurred. What if you want it to only allow the reversal to occur if it's within a 5-bar period? Okay, so that's what this little drop down here, this is new. And this, again, is going to open up a lot of possibilities, because not only can you use it here, you can use it in all the possible different trailing actions and triggers too. There's basically, this one design is now kind of everywhere in the product. So for example, if I select this, this tells Blackbird, reverse the position when this stop gets filled, but only do it if it happened within the first 5 bars, right? And of course, I can adjust this to 3 bars. I can add, you know, instead I want, you know, within the first 30 seconds, you know, or with a certain amount of tick movement, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just going to give you a real sneak peek here.
Jerry, probably a common use for that would be only reverse if in a loss, you know, if a loss is taken.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so you can do that if you're, well,
So
generally, exactly.
Yeah, so if your stop loss moves up to break even, then you wouldn't take a loss, so it wouldn't reverse on you.
Mm-hmm.
But if your stop hasn't moved to break even, then you might want to reverse. Yeah.
Oh, so you can use that in conjunction with your trailing actions and sort of create a weaving set of rules between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you want to go really advanced too, and I was just about to show, is you can actually multiply the complexity, if you will, right? There's an advanced tab down here. And so you can have this condition fire and then say contingent of only if this other condition fires as well, right? And then you can choose, you know, do I want, if you can sort of say if any of these fire, you know, or maybe you specify they have to fire in this particular order for it to be valid before it's triggered. Like, you can get pretty complicated. You know, just know it's there. I'm just going to keep it simple for the sake of the demo though. All right, I'm just going to go back here. Okay, so we're just going to fire as long as like within 4 bars, but just know there's a ton of customization that's possible there. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at that in action.
Order submitted.
All right. Oh, I meant to actually tighten that up so we're not waiting so long, guys. So sorry about that. Let's tighten this guy up to like a 5 tick. All right. And I'll move it back and then in a bit, but here, let's go long.
Order submitted.
And then I'm gonna make us go down like so. And I think on my computer, I might not be in the right,
I think you have the wrong time session set for your
yeah,
bars.
okay, let's
Order
let's
failed.
do that. Thank you, Mike. All right, so instrument settings, we need to, because we're aftermarket hours, folks, so we just gotta make sure that we're, just for the sake of the demo, I'm gonna use 24/7 here. Okay, and let's go long.
Order submitted.
Okay, there we go. Now we can see our little price moving here. Okay, and once we get stopped
Order
out, gets
submitted.
reversed immediately. Let's force another reversal just to illustrate that it can do that. And let's get up there. Yeah, you know, I was demoing this, dude. I was sort of practicing this demo. I remember the price was moving so slow. We're just sitting here.
Order
Okay.
submitted.
And so that was two consecutive reversals. I'm going to try to force it for a third time here. And if you recall, I did set the maximum to 2.
Order
Okay,
failed.
so the maximum is 2. It's not going to chop you up a third time. Okay, that's a neat little tool that you can use for auto reversing. Okay, we've also added kind of auto scaling actions. All right, so let me just widen this guy out again here. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm going to go into the trailing actions, and this is kind of where it gets really fancy. Okay, so these little trailing actions have 2 components, or rather 3. I won't talk about the third one quite yet. Don't want to make it too complicated, but basically it has a trigger, and as you saw, this familiar trigger looks just like the one you just saw a moment ago. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put profit loss trigger in here. I'm going to say, say if we lose 4 ticks, have this guy fire off. And what we're going to do, just pretend if we fire off, if we lose 4 ticks, you say, let's scale in another contract and try to get in, try to average dollar cost average or whatever you want to do to get in for another position. Okay, so that's a new action, folks, is the scale in action now.
Order
Okay,
submitted.
so I'm gonna go in and just illustrate. Okay, and we're gonna try to get this to 4. Now you might see this actually hit 4 and it not actually scale in immediately, and the reason why is because the actual reported amount here differs
Order
just
submitted.
very slightly from what the bid and ask might be, and so what we do is we actually calculate the kind of the correct loss internally, even though an indicator might be reporting something different. And also the other factor maybe is this simply does not update quick enough for you to see the change. Like this little display is on a tiny bit of a throttle, so it's not overwhelming the system. But anyways, what you saw there was it scaled in another position, and that just happened again. It was triggered from the profit and loss trigger that we just set up.
Order failed.
Okay, so something else that's kind of cool. I won't kind of go too deep into this, but something else that's kind of cool with this is these trailing actions you can repeat. So in theory, you could have actually told it to repeat a couple times, like a reevaluate it, and reevaluate the trigger again. And so you could tell it to repeat X number of times. Like there's a lot of kind of flexibility in how each one of these rules are set up, and there's no limit to how many triggers you can set up as well. Okay, so that covers the scale in action. That's also new. All right, so this is something that is on the surface seemed like it was really easy to implement, but turned out to be quite a doozy to put together properly. Okay, so what I'm talking about is, imagine you have this scenario, right, where you designed this order set to do exactly what you want it to do. You got it dancing around, you got it following indicators, you got it jumping, here and there, you got it setting to break even just like you like it to do, but you want to do a second set that basically does exactly the same thing, except maybe just a tiny bit wider, or maybe wider by, let's just say an ATR or something. So what we can actually do is I can go here and I can say, all right, base your price off of another order. I want to base it off this order over here. So I can put the stop loss up here like so, but offset it by 2 ticks plus 3 ATR, right? Right, so that's basically 3 ATRs and 2 ticks further away from this stop loss. And then what's really neat is, say you do move the stop loss around, you could quite easily tell this stop loss to follow this one on every tick, plus or minus maybe the offset that you've calculated there. And that looks really neat, but let's just see what that looks like. Okay.
Order submitted.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, it pretty much just happened right away, but as you can see, the first stop loss went in, and yeah, I don't think we can sort of manually verify this immediately, but it went 2 ticks and then 3 ATRs out. ATR 14's out, and that's basically what this little guy is here. So yeah, now you have the ability to sort of base your prices of each order, not just on the highs and lows or the close price, but you can base it off a previous order now, and it'll prevent you from getting into trouble. Like, for example, if I did something like this and I'm like, I want this to be based off of this other stop loss. All right. Okay. So for example, if you tell BlackBird base this guy off this guy and this guy off this guy, it's gonna be like, well, we don't really have a starting point here, so I can't evaluate that for you. So it'll prevent things like that. So those are little like idiosyncrasies that we have all kind of worked out as well, just to make sure you don't get yourself into some sort of what we call circular dependency between these order sets. Okay, so let's just snap that back. But I have kind of one more thing to show, and I'm just going to mention it because at this point here, I want to show just one more action that we do have in the spirit of reversing. We do have a new action here called reverse position. And so you can actually kind of configure it so that based off that really powerful trigger engine that we've showed you before, just a glimpse of, you can have it reverse your position based off something like some sort of condition there. Yeah.
That means you could even reverse based off a BloodHound signal if you wanted to. So you could come up with basically any idea for a rule for when to reverse if that's your jam.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 Okay. All right. So yeah, that basically concludes the demo portion there.